Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. It's World Backup Day, so you know what that means. We're going to be talking about storage, backing up your photos, your videos, everything. That stuff right there that Mr. Pete Iskrig is holding up. Pete, what's going on, man?
How you doing, Derek?
Good, good. Long time no see. I haven't
I
hosted
know,
you in a
right?
while.
Yeah, it's I don't think we've done this in since last month probably, or maybe January.
Yeah, it's been quite some time. So every once in a while, we let Pete get on here and just have some fun. So that's what we're doing today. Want to send a huge thank you to Pete for joining us, Western Digital SanDisk for sponsoring today's event. It's fun. It's trivia. I'm going to kick it over to Pete because no one does it better than him. Pete, show is yours.
All right, thank you. Um, all right, everybody, welcome to our trivia night session. Derek, before um, you go away completely, I am not seeing any attendees in the Zoom room. I know you said we're streaming to YouTube. Are we only in YouTube,
We
or nobody's coming to the Zoom room?
we are not. We do have the Zoom room open, but I'll take that opportunity, Pete, to just jump in with you here. And we're going to drop a link in for the Zoom room. So for everybody joining in YouTube and from our live streams on Vimeo and across the internet on Facebook, you do need to be in the Zoom room to be applicable to win today's giveaway. So we will get the link dropped in there. If you are not in Zoom, again, you cannot be in the drawing for today's giveaway. So make sure you guys do that. And Pete, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, sounds good. So, all right, everybody. Well, today's March 31st. It's World Backup Day. So hopefully you all have a backup solution. If you don't, you're going to learn a lot about various backup solutions this afternoon. It is 5 o'clock here in New York. Hopefully you grab a drink with me and sit back and relax, and we'll have a little bit of fun. We'll have some questions and some answers. And that said, World Backup Day, we have some specials. So if you don't have a backup solution after this event, you'll know all you need to know about backup drives. You'll be able to get the best one and the right one for yourself. And we have a whole bunch of show specials going on with B&H right now today. So if you just go to their main website page, at the top banner says World Backup Day. There's a little button there that says Shop the Deals. You can find all of our drives. You can find everything that's on special there. And you can buy what you need to get there. So, and ask your questions away. So that said, I'm going to be sharing my screen momentarily, and I'm going to be hosting trivia via PowerPoint, unfortunately, but don't worry, this is not a death by PowerPoint event. I'm hopefully making this a little bit of fun, but it will be done via PowerPoint. I will show you a question. We'll give you some time to get some answers. And then we will, I'll show you the real answer, and we'll go into some in-depth explanations. And for those of you who are watching this on any of the live streams, if you have questions, put them into the comments of the live stream that you're watching. And Derek in the background will be feeding them to me as well. So hopefully we'll get your questions answered. I want to make sure we get all your questions answered. So even if they don't apply to this, please ask away, and we'll get your questions around. All right, that said, let me share my screen.
And Pete, I just got some intel. We might be having some technical difficulties with people trying to get into the Zoom room.
I was going to say there are 0 people in the Zoom room, and that didn't seem likely.
So we're gonna put on the stall tactic now as we work on that.
So I get to vamp a little bit.
You
then.
yeah, right. Go off the cuff freestyle here.
Okay, so let's see. Well, one of the things that I did want to let you guys know, for the winner of this trivia event, or Derek, should I even be going into all this, or am I just gonna have to repeat myself once we figure out the Zoom room and let people in? I'm probably people will
yeah, you know what, we have Scott and the rest of the team working behind the scenes. I'll jump back on screen here with you, so you're not alone there, Pete, and we'll hope we get this mitigated shortly. But it's funny. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, let's bring up some conversation about storage. And then I'm like, knowing me, I'll put my foot in my mouth and I'll give away one of the answers.
Well, I was just going to ask you, so what is your backup solution? What is your storage? What do you have going on there?
I have currently a bunch of these scattered
Oh
on
yeah,
my
yeah.
desk.
Your kid's cell phone, if I
Yes, my
remember
kid's cell
correctly.
phone. I will say, probably the best immediate storage solution I've had. Like I had told you before, my kid, I have a 5-year-old, and he loves to use them as a cell phone. So every once in a while, they get unplugged and thrown around, which kind of gives me anxiety because I have a couple 2 terabytes, a couple 1 terabyte, and it's not too comforting having that on there. And that's why I need to move to solid, like a RAID setup where I have something that my son can't just pick up and tote around the house.
Yep.
But it's good to have for me. One of the things I know, and if this gives away any answers to what's going on, Pete, but one of the questions that always comes up when it comes to storage is switching cards between cameras and different cameras of different systems. We did a photo walk yesterday, and that actually came up because somebody was worried that they were going to format the card to use it in one brand camera because they were borrowing a camera, and that when they got back to their native camera, that they were going to have an issue even if they reformat it.
That is going to be one of the questions and topics we will discuss. So yeah,
Okay,
I don't want
good.
to give away any answers at the moment there.
Good. Well, just in time, Ted let me know that the Zoom seems to be working now, and we do see some people pouring in. So
Okay.
I promise everyone next time I will get some better stall tactics for you. Kind of drop the ball on you here. Kept it
All
a little
right.
boring, but Pete,
And again, so for those of you who are watching on the live streams, head on over to the Zoom room if you can, because that's where we're going to be doing the Q&A, and that's where we will be doing, that's where I'll be picking, or that's how you will be entering the raffle, because for basically every, oh, I can't type an answer there, it just goes away. So for basically every correct answer, we're going to be logging it. You get entered into the raffle, and you'll win our G Drive 2 terabyte drive at the end of the session. I'll put all those names into Excel, and you just have Excel choose a cell at random, and that's how I will choose the winner there. So every correct answer gets one entry into my Excel spreadsheet there. So hopefully more of you join in, and we get some involvement there, because I know people are coming. All right, so let's try this again. Screen share. Oh, good, more people are joining. Okay. Let's get the chat open so that I can see your answer. So again, Derek and or Scott, if you can open up the chat to everyone so that they can put their answers. So again, guys, put your answers in the Zoom room, put your answers into the chat, not into the Q&A, because the Q&A, I have to click everything away and it can get tedious. So let's reserve the Q&A for questions. If you have actual questions, or you want to know anything about what you're hearing, or if you have your own questions about backup or storage or memory cards, please put it into the Q&A, and I will get to it throughout the event. And hopefully we get some good questions, we get some good answers and whatnot. So while I'm talking, those of you in the Zoom room, please let us know where you're from. I love seeing virtual events, the draw of where we get people from, because usually we can get them from all over the world, and that's really cool. All right, somebody from New York, New Jersey, Richmond, Virginia. All right, Colorado, that's pretty far from New York here. Okay, so looks like we've got a decent amount of people have joined now. We got about 20 of you in the Zoom room, so that's good. Okay, all right, so so how this works is I'll just go through these PowerPoint slides. I'll pop up a question. I'll give you a couple minutes to put a couple seconds to put some answers into the chat, and we'll go from there. So here's your first question, and I promise they won't all be this boring, but I do have a point for asking this one. I do want, I do have some information for you on why this is important, but Western Digital owns SanDisk Professional and SanDisk, true or false? Or yes or no, the same thing. All right, looks like you guys are all getting this correct. these aren't that hard of trivia questions, all things considered. So that is true. And, like I said, why is this important? Well, it is important for a couple reasons. And I see a few of you are putting answers into the Q&A section. Let's move your answers to the chat rather than the Q&A so that we can leave the Q&A section open. So if you have questions about products and whatnot. Also, it's easier for me to get a text transcript of the chat and then put that in Excel, and that's how I actually do the raffle and everything. So, all right. So yes, that is true. We are all one company, and that basically happened over the last decade where, Western Digital bought SanDisk, and they actually bought G Technology, which we then rebranded into SanDisk Professional. I'll get to that in just a minute. But, Western Digital bought SanDisk because SanDisk has all the patents for the flash memory that are in these little memory cards and whatnot that you see here. And they wanted those patents, so they bought SanDisk. And they bought G Technology because they wanted the HGST drive mechanism that's in these 3.5-inch spinning drives, the enterprise class drives that are there. So by combining all of these companies into one, Western Digital becomes a vertically integrated company. And what does that mean? What is that important? It means that because now they own all the patents, they can do all of the engineering and all of the research and development and all the manufacturing for every component and every little piece of their product. They are not cobbling together their hard drives by buying someone else's drive and buying, someone else's enclosure, putting the two together. Things don't always work well when you cobble something together like that, but they work well when a company is vertically integrated because it means from, the ground up, they can control the whole product. And that's especially important for tech products. So if you're looking for anything that's technology related, you really want to look for a company that says vertically integrated. It means you're going to get a much higher quality product and one that, every little piece was designed so you won't have little technical glitches and whatnot in there. I also mentioned, now they had bought G Technology and transitioned to SanDisk Professional. So basically what happened about a year ago, we just switched the brand name on the G Technology brand. So if all of you guys know those, the G Technology hard drives and whatnot, I want to assure you everything has remained exactly the same about G Tech. We just transitioned this in brand name only. And that really was because we want to start trying to sell these products outside of the United States. And G Technology is very well known in the United States, but it's not well known outside of the United States. And it's very hard to go into new territories when you are delivering a sort of higher quality, higher end premium product to get people to actually believe you when they've never heard your brand name. So by folding them under the SanDisk umbrella, we hope to capitalize off of that brand reputation so that people will actually believe us when we say that these are premium quality drives for photographers and these are the professional solution. And you'll learn a little bit more about why these are the professional solutions if you're not as familiar with those brands and those products as well. All right, so that said, we're going to go on to the next question. Oh, I see some Q&A in the chat here then. So Jim, can you tell me, when purchasing cards from you, is there a difference between using a standard SD card and a micro SD card with adapter? Yes, there is, Jim, and that is one of the questions. So I am not going to give away the answer just yet, but stay tuned. We will be talking about that. And then Chris is asking, over the years, I've had about 10 plus hard drives, and many of them contain the same info, basically backups for the backups. And I know that some drives have some additional data that others do not. Is there any sort of large capacity hard drive and software to go along with it that can search out duplicates and allow me to streamline my storage? Well, Chris, I can definitely, we're going to talk about some larger archival hard drives, some RAID systems that have multiple drives inside. In terms of software that can do it for you, I did know something. Hopefully I'll think of it as as this session goes on, but there was some software that I know of that's somewhat of a file management software that I know a lot of people have used in the past. I haven't used it personally, but I'm forgetting the name of it offhand. Hopefully I can remember it and we can go from there. All right, so that's it. We'll go on to the next question. True or false, you should always buy the fastest speed memory card. I should get like a little sound clip that plays the Jeopardy sound or something for each of these. All right, where is my video panel? I can't see myself talking to you guys, and that's, oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so a lot of you, we got some mixed answers actually, so that's good. That is false. I always say it is not a good idea to buy the fastest speed memory card. And why not? Well, the short answer is two reasons actually. The short answers for both are, one, not all cameras support the faster speed memory cards, so you'll pay a lot of extra money for speed that you don't get any advantage out of from your camera. And two, the majority of photographers don't shoot in such a way that needs the faster speed cards in their cameras. So we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But for example, SD cards, there are these little pieces of plastic. This is a UHS-1, this is a UHS-2 card. They're different, but they look exactly the same. They're exactly the same form factor. Both will fit in any SD slot in a camera. But unless your camera supports the UHS-2, which is the faster speed card, you won't see any speed advantage on it. And why? Well, if you look at the back, and you can see the images I have on the screen there, there's an extra set of hardware pins on the back of UHS-2 cards. And if your camera doesn't have that extra row of pins, it doesn't have a way to read and write faster to that card. It just utilizes that top row of pins and writes at the UHS-1 speeds. And as you can see here, I have a little bit of tentative pricing on the side there. There's a significant price difference between the two cards. And so if you buy the faster speed card and you've got a camera that only takes UHS-1 cards, you've wasted your money there, essentially. And then the second reason is, unless you're really shooting high quality video or you're doing burst shooting, you probably don't need the faster UHS-2 speed memory card in your camera. You can get away with saving some money and buying the slower speed UHS-1 cards, and they will perform pretty much just as well as the faster speed cards. You probably won't notice any speed difference whatsoever. And the same applies to micro SD cards. There are different speed micro SD cards, and just because there are faster speeds doesn't mean the device you use them in can handle it. And so that said, if you don't know what your camera model takes, we have this handy little guide, not that one, this one. I put together this little PDF document. It's like 10 or 11 pages of all of the various camera model manufacturers, and it will tell you, I think we've tried to get almost all the cameras made in the last decade on this list, and it will tell you what memory cards are compatible and what are recommended for your memory card, and that's the C and the R that you see here. And don't worry, I will be putting, at the end of this event, I'll be putting a link into the chat where you guys can download these resources, all these little digital flyers that I'm about to show you throughout this presentation. They'll be available to download, as well as these PowerPoint slides as well. You can download these as well, so you don't have to screenshot this or worry about missing some information. You will be able to get these documents afterwards. All right, so I see a couple more questions as we move on. Mickey from one of the live streams is asking, what data recovery software would you recommend? Well, we'll get into that in a little bit with some future questions, but generally speaking, there's really only one, well, there's two softwares that I would recommend. One, Disk Warrior for hard drives and SSDs. That usually works very well, and it's directory recovery software. And you'll learn a little bit about what a directory is actually, I think, in the next question. And for memory cards, if you have any issues with them, they're in all of our SanDisk memory cards. There's a little piece of paper inside that gives you a code for 1 year license of a data recovery software called Rescue Pro. And again, that's directory recovery software. And after a year, you can buy another license, or just buy another $10 or $15 card from us, get another code in the card, and you get another free year for every card that you buy. So you can stack those one upon the other if you want an indefinite license on that. So those are good for data recovery, but again, it's directory recovery, it's soft data recovery. The only really good data recovery solutions are ones where you have to send them away to companies that take apart your drive and can read the platters and whatnot. Those are more professional solutions. They're hardware solutions. There's nothing on the market that I can tell you to buy or to use yourself. So, that's where you want to contact a company like Drive Savers out in California and do data recovery in that way. All right. And yes, David, you are right. It is very expensive to do that kind of data recovery, which is why you should always have a backup. It's World Backup Day. Always have a backup, and we're going to talk about good backup solutions. That's one of my questions as well. So, I'm glad that you guys are here as well. All right, so David's asked a question. Currently uses a large hard drive which sits on his desk and multiple smaller SSDs for editing from an iPad and laptop. Considering a RAID, is cloud-based the way to go? WD My Cloud. Oh, David, you have also asked a question that is one of our future questions there. So I'm going to put that on pause and jump back in if once we get to that question you feel I haven't really answered you well enough. And then John asks, he has 3 G Technology hard drives amongst a bunch of other drives. Last purchase was this 18 terabyte G drive. Do you have more robust solution? I need something that can handle professional grade video and raw photos quickly and with an M1 Max and much larger capacity. Yes, John, when we start to talk about the RAID solutions, they will be much faster and much larger capacities. So we will hopefully, I'll have answered your questions there. Okay, I love these questions, keep them coming. But like I've said, you guys are asking a lot of the questions that will be here as well. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next question here, guys, get ready. True or false, never format a memory card in a computer? All right, answers coming in. Good, you are all getting this correct, it looks like. True. I would say never format a memory card in a computer, unless, of course, that memory card is only ever going to be used in that computer, which, a lot of the new MacBooks have an SD card slot. If you're only ever going to use that in the computer, it's fine to format it in the computer. But you always want to format a memory card in the camera body you're using it in. And this is where I mentioned the directory file. So basically what happens when you format a memory card, it writes a directory file to the memory card. And that's what the camera interacts with to tell it where on the card are stored images and where are free space and whatnot. You want to always format this in the camera that you're using, and because not all cameras create that directory file identical. They all create it in a compatible way, so it will work, one card in multiple cameras or into a computer. You've all experienced that. But what happens is the minor differences in that directory file that those camera bodies create can result in some image loss or data corruption. It's not necessarily something that's going to, when I say all of these tips and tricks, it's not like these are going to definitely solve that issue. And it's not like these are all going to prevent that issue either. It just reduces your chances, which were very minor to begin with anyway. So just be aware of that, none of these are foolproof and none of these are, the opposite as well, but they are just best practices to help reduce those chances. And I don't want to scare you. It's not like if you do mix them or you do format it in a computer and use it in a camera, you're gonna have image corruption and whatnot. You're increasing the likelihood slightly if you do. Another thing we like to tell you for memory cards is don't mix the cards and camera bodies. So if you're using one card in one camera, don't take it out and put it into another card. Again, because it will have a slightly different directory file on it, and you increase the chances of data corruption on it by doing that. If you do have to use it in another camera, we recommend reformatting it first, and keep in mind you will lose your data on that card when you reformat it as well. So if you have to switch between camera bodies, always reformat it first. And actually, it's always a good, in my opinion, it's always a good idea to reformat a memory card every couple of months anyway, just to keep it a little fresh and to keep that software corruption that can happen on it at a minimum. So once you're done with the project, rather than just erasing the files to free up the space on the memory card, reformat the card instead. That's going to help a lot. We like to also tell you guys to use small capacity cards rather than large ones. These are little pieces of plastic. You often misplace them, you lose them, you drop them on the ground and step on them and you break them. They're not the most durable things. We don't want you losing a large chunk of data or a card that you spent $500 or $600 on for, you know, like the 1 terabyte or something, when you don't really need that much capacity in your everyday shooting or whatnot. It's always better to fill up a small capacity card and then take it out and well, I'll hopefully back it up somewhere, but put a new card in and continue shooting. The only time I tell people to really use large capacity cards is if you're shooting video and you know you have to be shooting for hours at a time without interruption, then you need the higher capacity cards. That's a good place to use those as well. We like to tell you guys to also read and write to a memory card at least once a year, if not more often. Don't leave them inactive for too long, and always have a backup of them. And again, just leaving memory cards inactive for too long, some of the electrical components in the flash memory in there can lose their charge, and they can essentially, it can result in some data corruption on the card. So always try to keep them a little bit active as often as you can. We tell you always use a card reader, like this little guy here. It's a 3-in-1 card reader. Probably can't see it on my little video screen, but it supports a compact flash, both types of SD cards and micro SD cards, for 2 reasons. One, at least our SanDisk brand card readers, they will read the card a whole lot faster than your camera will. So, when you look at a memory card, have you ever noticed, where's my right? So on like the UHS-1 cards, if you can see here in the top, it says it's 170 megabytes read-write speeds on it. That's the maximum speed. But UHS-1 actually maxes out at 95 megabytes write speeds. You're never going to get faster write speeds in your camera than that. But you will get faster read speeds, but you have to use our SanDisk brand card readers to get that. So in theory, you can actually offload the data on that card twice as fast by using a card reader, as opposed to just connecting, that little USB port on your camera into your computer and offloading it there. I like to tell people not to do that, that I just mentioned there, of connecting your camera and offloading it that way, because for 2 reasons. 1, you waste your battery life on the computer, on the camera. And 2, you also, the little USB port on there really isn't designed to handle that much data throughput. It can result in some errors in transferring the data, whereas card readers are designed to handle that. So, you just get a little bit more reliable of a data transfer when using a card reader. And then lastly, and most importantly, and I think this was a question mentioned earlier, micro SD versus with an adapter. And so I see a lot of you do this. A lot of you guys ask this question. And I know the temptation is there because micro SD cards tend to be a couple dollars cheaper, but don't ever do that. Don't ever use this little plastic adapter piece that comes with the micro SD card and use it in a full-size camera SD card slot. These little plastic pieces, they're cheap technology. They are not really designed to handle the amount of data throughput that a camera will be reading and writing to that memory card, and it will result in image loss and data corruption. That one more so than any of the other tips and tricks here. So you should only buy full-size SD cards for use in SD card slots. The micro SDs really are only meant to be used in devices that take them natively, like a phone, a drone, an action camera, etc. Those are the only places you should be using those, not in the little adapter. The little adapter, really, it's only ever useful in a pinch if you don't have a micro SD card reader for whatever you're doing or at that moment. But don't use it on a regular basis. You will lose files and full photos in that way. All right, David says he reformats his card every time he goes on a new shoot. Is there a good practice, or can you format them too much? That is good practice, David. You cannot reformat. Well, there are a limited amount of read and write speed cycles that these memory cards have. I'll get into that when we talk about SSDs in a little bit. But we're talking about probably years worth of use out of these cards, which I recommend every couple of years replacing your cards anyway. So even if you reformatted the card every day, you're not going to overuse it or use up the amount of read write cycles it has. It's just really, it's a very astronomically high number. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. All right, Chris says he's got a MyBook Essential that no longer seems to work. He's been trying to purchase newer SSD drives and they have no moving components for the older hard drives that are no longer readable, that he don't want to pay professional recovery. How do you dispose of them? Look up, there's a couple of things. Look up e-waste recycling events that are local in your community. That's really the only way to dispose of hard drives. Although, or bring them to any local computer shop that's near you. Most of them have some sort of recycling program. Derek, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe B&H does have a way that you can recycle electronics with them. I don't want to overspeak there. If you guys are in the background.
I'm going to let Scott confirm that.
Okay. All right. He did say, yes, he did into the chat, although he only directed it to me. Scott did put in there that B&H does have this. So you can bring them into B&H. They will dispose of them. One thing I like to tell people to do, if it's dead and there was data on it that's sensitive, I tell people to take a power drill and drill a hole through the hard drive. That way it's not data, like if somebody worse, if an unscrupulous person happened to get a hold of your hard drive for whatever reason, there's no data recovery options with a hole through the spinning hard drive itself. So, or hopefully you trust the place you're dropping it off on. I know B&H would never do that, so you can drop it off at B&H and they wouldn't, your data would be safely discarded and whatnot as well. All right, Esteban wants to know, when downloading files, copy and paste, then format or cut the files and forget about formatting. I have this question asked by students constantly. When downloading the files, copy, paste, then format or cut the files and forget about formatting. I'm not sure I understand that question, but
Pete, I think he's asking, so when you're clearing your SD card off, when you're offloading your images, if you just cut them and drag everything off and clear the card that way, if you just remove all the files from the card, does that work?
That's what I was thinking he was asking. I do not recommend doing that. I would recommend reformatting the card instead of just deleting all the files off of it. Because in time directory files, it's all software that's written onto the memory card. And over time, it will corrupt itself. Have you ever been in a situation where something on your computer or your cell phone isn't working the way you expect it to, and you think the whole thing has gone bad, and the simple solution was to restart the computer or restart the phone, and then it suddenly works again, and you were like, how did that just happen? That's basically software corruption. As your computer or your phone just runs continuously, little things happen in the background that can corrupt the software on it, and they just need to be restarted. Reformatting a memory card is like restarting the memory card. So I would recommend doing that often if you can, instead of just deleting the files off of it. It helps to ensure that that directory isn't getting corrupted, because if you keep that same directory file and just keep reusing it, in time it will corrupt and you'll start to lose more images and whatnot. You don't want to get to that point. All right, John wants to know what the best card for his Canon 1D Mark III. He shoots 4K video in burst mode for sports photography in RAW. Well, offhand, I don't know that model specifically, but let's look to our little guide and see if it's there. So you were looking for Canon, and it is, you're asking about the 1D Mark. Oh, I got the 2 on there. Do I have 3 somewhere? 1D Mark III, there it is. Why don't we put these in alphabetical order? I have no idea. So that says it only takes compact flash cards. Ooh, you're all right. So you can, but it can take both of our faster speed compact flash and our, which is the Extreme Pro and the Extreme. So John, I would recommend taking the faster speed card there for burst photos and for 4K video. You'll want that Extreme Pro card there. All right, so Elizabeth asks, she doesn't understand about reformatting the card frequently. Is that after the data has been saved to an external? Yes, Elizabeth, we're talking about when people are done with the photos that they've stored on a card, or that they've finished a project and they want to reuse that card for something else. So it's obviously, it's always about when you're done with the images, whether you don't need them anymore, or whether you've offloaded them to your computer or a backup hard drive, or you've got a backup somewhere else. Yeah, it's always about when it's time to start a new project on that card. It's never about, you know, just when the card is, you finished shooting on it. Because obviously anytime you reformat the card, you lose all of the data on it. John wants to know where you can get that PDF. I just saw that. I will make that available to all of you at the end of this session. I'm going to put a link into the chat at the end that will have all the little flyers that I'm showing you, as well as this PowerPoint deck in general. Don wants to know what the best card for the A6 series is. Don, I will, you can look at that document afterwards. I can, like I said, I'll make it available to all of you to download. So if you want to take a look at that document, and you can find out what the best memory card for your camera is there. Kat asks, if you have a memory card that's half full of pictures, should you wait and reformat when the card is full, or if it's okay to reformat half full? I would say it doesn't matter when you want to reformat a card, as long as those images are no longer needed, because again, you'll lose all those images. It doesn't matter if you have one image on there or if it's filled up. Reformat the card when you're ready to use it again. And I would just say in general, reformat a card every couple of months in use anyway, because that's just going to be good practice in general. All right, so we got a few questions coming in from the live streams from Vimeo. Jim is asking, do SSDs read and write the same number of times as a drive read and write? In other words, is there advantage to an SSD drive or memory in terms of read write? Jim, you have asked one of the questions that will come up shortly, so we will get to that later. And Sue wants to know, she's got 2 4 terabyte My Passports with 50,000 photos on them. Will EHDs always fail eventually? When to replace, and with what? Only use at home and plugged in and you don't take them anywhere. So Sue, again, that's another question that hopefully I will address when we get to the hard drive section of this presentation. So hopefully you'll have a good grasp on what the life of a hard drive is, and when and what hard drives to buy and when to replace them, etc. Okay. All right, we're going to go on to the next question here. True or false, SanDisk CF Express memory cards are 3 times faster than XQD? And I will preface this question with, this is a little bit of a legacy question that I need to figure out a new way of talking to you guys about CF Express cards, because this was more so designed before CF Express started to become the standard on a lot of cameras, back when it was all XQD and it was people weren't really sure what CF Express versus XQD was all about. Looks like all of you are getting this correct. That is true. And the big takeaway here is obviously it's 3 times faster than an XQD. So if you've got one of these old camera models, and I've listed a few of them there on the right side of the screen, if you've got one of those older models that take XQD cards, you can do a firmware update from the manufacturer, which will enable that card slot to take CF Express cards, because They are exactly the same form factor as XQDs, but they're a lot faster. And then one of the other advantages, two other advantages of them. One, CF Express doesn't data throttle. And what I mean by that is data throttling is when flash memory starts to slow down after you use it. By virtue of the technology and the electrical and chemical reactions that happen in flash memory, they heat up as you use them. They heat up a lot. And in order to prevent the cards from essentially melting or destroying themselves, they need a way to dissipate that heat. So data throttling happens. It starts to turn on and off the read and write functions of the card in nanosecond intervals. So you don't really see it, but what happens is it manifests itself by slowing down your data transfer. So you start to see that you're reading and writing it probably half the speed it's capable of, because it has to slow down in order to not overheat. But our cards have a way to dissipate that heat so you don't see the amount of data throttling in a CF Express card versus an XQD. And then the last thing about XQD, it's just a better format than, a CF Express is just a better technology than XQD because it's open source. It means there's going to be a lot more development for it. There's going to be a lot more future compatibility for these cards. So as you start to consider whether you need XQD or CF Express cards are going to be the future, and there's going to be a lot more going on with them. Whereas XQD is going to be closed sort of to what Sony wants to do with them. All right, I got a question. John asks, is it true you should not delete photos while the card is in the camera? I would say it's not good practice to do that. It really doesn't matter either way, but I would say just, leave everything as you shoot, and you reformat the card after you've offloaded those files wherever else they need to go. And when you're done with all those images, just reformat it rather than trying to delete images off of a card manually. It just wastes battery life, it wastes time, etc. All right, we'll go on to the next question. True or false, photos taken on an iPhone are stuck on that iPhone forever? And hopefully, we added this question because a lot more people are starting to do photography on iPhones and phones in general. But iPhones specifically make it very hard, as most of you have gotten this question correct. It's false, but that doesn't mean Apple makes it easy to get access to those photos or makes it very user-friendly. In fact, they make it very difficult to get photos, or you have to do it in a very roundabout way. You don't have a lot of easy access directly while you're shooting or capturing images on an iPhone. You usually have to take it back to a home computer. You have to plug it in. You have to wait for it to sync. You have to offload it to your Photos app or wherever else you want to go. It's a pain in the butt. And again, you have to have a computer along with you. We make a product on our SanDisk side called the iXpand Flashdrive Lux. It's this little guy right here. It's a little swivel flash drive. You can see on one end, there's a lightning port that plugs into your iPhone. And on the other end is a USB-C port that can plug into your computer. You can use this just like a little flash drive on your iPhone. You plug it into the iPhone, and then through our SanDisk app, which is free. Unfortunately, you do have to use our app though, because Apple restricts and limits the way third-party connected devices can interact with their phone. But through our app, you can tell it to either set automatically to download all of the photos to the drive in here, or you can selectively do it. You can just tell it, it will pop up with a list of your photos. You can just tap on the ones you want to back up. It transfers them to the drive. And then there's an option to, when it's done transferring, to either delete them from your phone or to leave them on your phone. So it can help clear up space if you're losing, if you're limited on free space on your phone. It can help back up and then clear out the photos on your phone as well. Then you plug in the USB end into your computer, and it shows up just like any sort of hard drive. And you can, all your photos are in a folder organized by year and by month taken, according to the date that the photos were taken. So there's a little bit of a hierarchy there, and you're not just stuck with, in the old days where devices like these just gave you gobbledygook names of files. So it organizes them for you a little bit as well. And vice versa, you can actually use this as additional storage for your phone. You can put content on here, you can plug it into your phone, and then you can watch those videos, you can see those photos, you can listen to the music files. So if you are traveling, you can use this as additional storage for your phone as well. Is there, and somebody's asking, is there compression when using the SanDisk flash drive? There is not. It copies the files directly. And Chris, this is called the SanDisk iExpand Flash Drive Lux. The name is there at the top of the slide for you as well. And again, I'll make these slides available to you guys at the end of any session, at the end of this session, so you can download these. And yes, David says it saves on paying extra for cloud storage. Yep, this is a one-time cost. You can see the costs listed there. Actually, they're probably a little out of date because I haven't updated this slide in a while, but they're probably a little cheaper by now. But certainly they can be cheaper than cloud services. And then you're not using, your data plan if you don't have an unlimited data plan. Can you also upload pictures from the computer to the phone using the flash drive? Yep. So you can, like I said, you can put the photos on the USB side like a flash drive and then unplug it, plug the lightning port in there, and then the phone through our SanDisk app will recognize photos, will recognize videos and music files as well. And you can view, play, listen to all of those on your phone as well. Okay, next question, here we go. True or false, the technology inside every hard drive is the same? Guys, the answers are coming so fast. I'm really pleased. All right. So, and almost all of you are getting that correct. That is false. Now here is, and somebody asked a question about this, about hard drives and lifespans and whatnot. This is the slide. This is the part of the presentation that, if you're a photographer, if you're a content creator, if you're a filmmaker, this is probably the most important part of this presentation. This is the one main takeaway that I want you to come away with is this slide and what I'm about to tell you here. I want you to know that not all hard drives are created equal. And basically what that means is there are component quality and engineering and things inside of the drive that make certain hard drives perform better than others and last longer and be able to handle more data throughput than others. So I really want to stress the importance of buying a hard drive that's right for how much workflow you're doing, how much read and writes you're doing, because if you don't, basically what happens is if you overuse a cheap drive, you're putting stress on the mechanical components inside and you're actually causing it to fail sooner than its lifespan. And I use this analogy that I've written out here. It's like trying to use a Honda Civic to haul a 2-ton trailer. Don't do it. You use a Dodge Ram truck if you're hauling a 2-ton trailer. That Honda Civic will pull that trailer. You'll get to where you need to go once or twice, but eventually you're going to kill that car's engine. Whereas you could all day long be driving that Dodge Ram truck with the trailer behind it, and you're not going to kill that Dodge Ram truck. The same applies to hard drives. There are different level of engines, so to speak, in hard drives that allow them to read and write more data than others. And so if you're not buying the right one, you're actually putting stress on the drive, you're causing that drive to fail. So I want to stress this because if you're a photographer, if you're a filmmaker, you all use hard drives significantly more than the average user. And if you're buying the base level, cheap consumer level hard drive, it's not designed to handle that much workflow. You need to buy a more professional level drive that you will get longer lifespans out of. And what drive is that? For photographers, the Dodge Ram truck of hard drives is the SanDisk Professional, formerly G Technology brand G Drive series of drives. It's these silver little boxes. Well, now they are space gray little boxes that you see here. If you're a photographer, if you're a content creator of any way, shape, or form, of all the brands of any product, of our products and any product out there, I would only recommend the SanDisk Professional drives because what's inside of them is that HGST drive, that enterprise class drive that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. This drive This is a data center drive. This is enterprise class. It means it's designed and engineered to spin and read and write data 24/7 without putting any stress on the mechanical components and without increasing the likelihood of failure. You buy other cheap drives, they're not designed that way. You spin and read and write data too much, you're overusing the engine, quote unquote, in that car, in that hard drive. But in all of the SanDisk Professional products are enterprise class drives inside of them. And because of that, you will get a good solid, if not 5 to 10 years of use out of that drive, because it's a mechanical drive. All mechanical parts and all mechanical objects eventually fail or have issues. So, you know, there's no way to get around failure. But what a lot of people don't quite realize is that you can overuse a hard drive to the point that you're causing it to fail. You can't overuse a SanDisk Professional hard drive to the point of increasing its failure likelihood. So if you are a photographer, I tell you only use the SanDisk Professional brand of drives. They cost a few dollars more, but you're gonna get a significantly longer life out of those drives. You know, we put a 5-year warranty on them, but I have some that are decades old. Well, not decades, not plural, but I have some that are more than 10 years old at this point that are still plugging along because they're just that reliable, as long as you care for them properly. You know, it's not just marketing speak. It's not like it's not like when Bic Pens puts out a pen in pink and says this pen is for women and only women should buy this pen. We're not putting a label on a hard drive saying this is for photographers, only photographers should buy this. There is legitimate engineering in these that make these better suited. So if you're looking at hard drives, again, SanDisk Professional should be the only brand of hard drives you look at and the only one you should buy. And David asks, does that mean the WD Easy Store drives die quicker and I have to replace them every 2 years? Yes, David, that is exactly why you have to replace those drives every 2 or 3 years. You're overusing them to the point that I mean, an Easy Store drive, it's a consumer level drive. It's meant to just sit on a desktop and be accessed for a few files a couple times a day, maybe a full backup once a month or so often. It's not meant to be used as frequently as a photographer does. So, you know, you're essentially killing, you know, the Easy Store is the Honda Civic in this, this metaphor, so to speak. And if we were actually in person at a tabletop or a trade show event, I'd have a bunch of products I'd be showing you guys right now. There wouldn't be any WD products on there for B&H events because I don't like showing them to photographers because I don't like telling photographers to buy those drives. Yes, you save a little bit of money, but in the long run, that drive's gonna die on you. I mean, how many of you have been in a situation where you've had a drive and 6 months later or a year later, it starts clicking? Or, you know, when you plug it into the computer, sometimes it recognizes it, or sometimes it just unmounts itself and it disconnects for no apparent reason. That's, you know, indications of drive failure. And it's basically caused by overusing of the cheaper consumer level drives. So you won't get any of those symptoms with SanDisk Professional drives. So again, don't use a Honda Civic, use a Dodge Ram truck. You know, and I have a few other examples here on the bottom. You know, we make another line on our WD Black sub brand that we make hard drives for gamers. And again, it's not just slapping marketing on there. Gaming consoles and PC gaming use data throughput a lot more than consumer level products can handle. So you similarly need a better quality hard drive for those uses as well. All right, John says, but those don't have big enough capacity or redundancy. Yep, that's my next question. And Sue on Vimeo wants to know how many terabytes do you recommend? Well, I can't recommend that. That's unique to every user. It depends on how much data you have and how much data you foresee yourself using in the future or creating in the future. I really can't answer that one for you, unfortunately. All right, we're going to go on to the next question. Oh, I guess it's not the next question. It's the question. The RAID one is after this one. This one is true or false. SSDs are more durable than traditional spinning hard drives. All right. You are all getting that correct. That is true. They are much more durable. So SSDs are solid state drives. They are flash memory inside. It's kind of similar to the memory that's inside your flash cards, or the memory cards, except it's a lot higher quality, it's a lot faster speed and whatnot. But the benefit of SSDs is there's no mechanical component, or there's no moving parts in here. There's no spinning hard drive inside, which makes these significantly more durable. They make them able to withstand drops, bumps and bruises, etc. And it also lets them be a lot faster than traditional spinning hard drives. So, you know, we have a couple models here on our SanDisk Professional and SanDisk line of products here. And the first one you see on the top left, the Drive Mobile SSD, that's this guy that you're going to win. One of you is going to win in this trivia contest afterwards. What's great about this one is, again, it's fast speeds, it's durable. The enclosure in our two SanDisk Professional drives, SSDs, these are up to 1,000 pounds crush proof and 3-meter drop protection as well. So they're very durable. You could drop this out a first floor window. You could run over it with a small car, and it's going to basically, you know, survive, and it's going to be great. And so one of the things I like to do, and that this is me, I like to do this at trade shows. That's the G drive in my hand right there. And I'll show this to you guys. I love to throw it on the ground, to drop it, and I like to stamp on it as hard as I can. And then I plug it back into the computer that we have at our demo stations and show people that it's still working and it's still functional. Because, you know, if this was a spinning hard drive, I would have probably cracked the enclosure, but I would have definitely killed the drive inside by doing anything like that. So, you know, they're much more durable. They're great for traveling if you're going back and forth, because even if you get the enterprise class SanDisk Professional desktop hard drive, if you're transporting this, even if you're careful with it, just moving it up and down, you know, even if it's not being dropped or getting bumped, just moving it up and down can shake the spinning component, mechanical components inside there, and it can increase the likelihood of some drive failure. So again, you know, you want to just, if you're traveling or whatnot, SSDs are the way to go. They're just much more durable. They're much faster. And then here's the biggest takeaway for SSDs that probably, hopefully some of you know, and maybe you don't. Data throttling. SSDs, just like memory cards, they heat up. They heat up significantly to the point that they probably get about half the transfer speeds that they advertise. And nobody really talks about this. You look at SSDs in the box, you're comparing read-write speeds, you know, you'll see like our little G drive gets about 1,000 megabytes read-write speeds. By comparison, the spinning hard drive here gets about 250 megabyte read-write speed. So this guy's up to 4 times faster than that. Our big drive here, Thunderbolt 3, gets 2,800 megabytes read-write speeds. It can be up to 10 times faster. But as you use SSDs, they slow down to about half the speed they're capable of, except for the two SanDisk Professional models that you see here on the screen and the ones that I'm holding up right now. We put a heat sink on them. That's why they're a little thicker. You can see here, this is our SanDisk one. It's a little thicker. Our Professional one is a little thicker. There's a heat sink directly attached to the SSD in both of these. It dissipates enough heat that these ones don't data throttle, that no matter how long you use these, you will get the full speed that they're capable of. Whereas literally every other brand, every other product, every other SSD on the market, there's no heat sink in them. They will all data throttle. There are a couple models that are, you know, have ways to help dissipate the heat so that they don't throttle as much. I know like our SanDisk Extreme Pro portable one that you see here in the corner, and I think the Samsung T5 has some ability to dissipate heat, but again, they will still data throttle, just maybe not as much as some of the others that are in plastic enclosures. But if you're a professional and you're looking to do your editing using this as a scratch disk, or this is where your Lightroom library lives, you can do your editing off of the SanDisk Professional ones because they are, you know, they'll dissipate enough heat, you'll get the full speed out of them. You won't see the speed decrease that you'll see in any other SSD on the market. So that's just something to consider if you're buying SSDs and when you're shopping the brands. Keep in mind, you know, I keep saying this over and over again. If you're a photographer, really SanDisk Professional should be the only brand of product for SSDs, hard drives, whatnot that you buy. because really they are the ones designed and engineered for the data throughput. And thanks for the reminder. Tom wants to know, what about the read-write cycles for SSDs? So that's what's called the endurance rating. So SSDs, and I think there was a question before about SSDs versus mechanical spinning hard drives. The lifespan of a mechanical spinning hard drive is, in theory, indefinitely, in theory forever, or at least until the mechanical components fail. There is no amount of read-write speeds or reads and writes on a spinning hard drive that eventually it dies. It will, eventually mechanical components die, so it will eventually die. But in theory, in a perfect world, it could last forever. SSDs and flash memory don't have that luxury. There are a limited amount of read and writes you can do to flash memory before it basically just says you can't do it anymore. The good part about that is when that happens, it's stuck in, the data isn't lost. The data is just stuck in a non-writable situation. So you can read the data off of these and pull the data off of a failed SSD if you ever need to. The data is still safe. You just can never write over it again. You can never erase it, essentially. There's a finite amount of read and writes before that. That's what's called the endurance rating. If you ever read about that spec, the higher the endurance rating on the drive, the more read-write cycles that you can do on it. And with our SanDisk Professional SSDs, we basically have an endurance rating that says if you wrote to the full capacity of the drive every single day for the 5-year warranty that it has, at that point, then the SSD would essentially fail. Most of you aren't using anywhere close to that amount of read and write cycles on an SSD. So you should get a lot more than 5 years out of a SanDisk Professional one. But we do put a 5-year warranty on them. And basically it covers us and it covers you for if the drive fails or has issues in the meantime before that. But it really shouldn't, unless you're reading and writing terabytes worth of data every single day. At that point, then you might see this die sooner than 5 years. But otherwise, you'll get a really good lifespan out of the SanDisk Professional ones as well. Cole is asking, what recommendations do you have for internal SSDs currently on the WD Blacks? Is there something better out there specifically for photo and video editing? There's a couple products that are good depending on what your price point is and how often you're going to be using it. The WD Black ones are probably, in my opinion, the SN770 or the SN850. Those are probably very good options. Those have, the 850 is up to 7,000 megabytes read-write speeds, and the 770, I want to say, is like, drawing a blank on it. I want to say it's either 3,600 megabytes per second or it's 5,000 megabytes per second. I can't remember offhand, but it's still much faster than any of these portable external SSDs. So WD Black, I would say that's probably the way to go. We don't really have a SanDisk Professional internal SSD yet. Not that I know if one's coming in the near future anyway either, but I don't think so. I haven't heard us talking about one for any time soon. So WD Black is still probably the way to go for internal SSDs. So hopefully, I know a couple of questions were asked previously about SSDs versus HDDs and life cycles and whatnot. Hopefully I've answered those well. If I haven't, put new questions into the chat for whoever asked those before, and we can talk about it a little bit more. Oh, and not so that I didn't bore you with all the specs of everything. We have, I have this little portable hard drive and SSD guide that again will be available to you at the end of the session. This has more information about all those SSDs that were on that slide and more, and some of the cloud drives and some of the iExpand drives. This has more of the boring speeds and feeds and whatnot on the product that I don't want to go over with you because nobody really cares for me to list off all the specs of products. Similarly, and I forgot to mention this, we also have one that gives you more in-depth information about all of our range of memory cards, as well as our card readers there as well. So you can get some more information, some more details on the speeds and feeds of our cards too. And again, those will be available to you. I'll put a link into the chat at the end of the session. All right, next question. Here's that RAID one I was talking about. RAID storage solutions can provide automatic and immediate backup. All right. Good. Most of you are getting this. In fact, all of you are getting this correct. That is true. What is a RAID store? What is a RAID drive? RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks, which is gibberish, right? But essentially what that means is inside of a hard drive box, there's multiple hard drives. In this case, there's two inside here. There's two hard drives. And you can read and write to them in such a way that you can basically have automatic backup for the systems. So we make a couple of options. We make a 2-bay system and we make a 4-bay system. Technically, we actually also make an 8-bay system, but I don't talk about it a lot because it really is overkill for most people. But if you have questions about the 8-bay, I'm happy to talk about them. But for most intents and purposes, the 2-bay systems or the 4-bay systems are probably a good way to go. And again, this is for those of you who are looking for larger archival storage solutions that still provide data redundancy or still provide some sort of backup system and whatnot. And so like I showed you, we've got the 2-bay system and those go up to 36 terabytes capacity, soon to be 40 terabytes, because basically what that means is inside of them, there are two 18 terabyte drives and again, soon to be two 20 terabyte drives. Actually, I think we just announced them last week, or maybe it was today, or maybe I've jumped the gun. Whatever the case, for the 2-bay systems, these are for those of you who are working off of large, you need a large storage. If you're working off of a hard drive, if this is where your Lightroom library lives, or if this is where the data that you're editing lives, and you're just using a single hard drive, or to the person who was using the WDEZ store, or somebody, one of you mentioned you were using a My Passport drive and whatnot. If you're working off of those drives, you have to back up that drive. You have to remember to do it after the fact. It can be tedious. It can be a long process. It can be a pain in the butt. You can be working on a file, and if that drive has issues, you can lose some of the data that's on that. So for any of you who are working off of a hard drive where that's where your main data is stored, I would encourage you to get a RAID system, buy these 2-bay drives. And what you do is you use it in RAID 1 mode, which is called mirror mode. And what that does is when you write to the drive, it writes the data on both drives equally so that you have an automatic backup on the second drive. And that way, the minute you do any edit, the minute you do any addition, the change is made to the other hard drive inside that box. And so you don't have to ever remember to do a backup. You don't have to wait for, at the end of the day for, a 4-hour backup to complete, if Time Machine or whatever you're using. You don't have to wait for that. It happens automatically. The downside to it is because it's mirroring the data, you only get half the capacity that the box is capable of. So if you buy the 36 terabyte, you effectively only get 18 terabytes worth of usable data because it's writing the same data on drive 1 as it's writing on drive 2. But you have that automatic backup. You don't have to worry about backing up. You don't have to worry about saving your data right away because it's done automatically in the background. And should any one of those drives in that fail, all you do is pop it out. We ship you a replacement under warranty, which is 5 years. And you pop it back in and it copies the data back over as well. But in the meantime, your data is still safe on the other drive and still functionally usable on the other drive. So, everything is safe and it's good to go there. And, the examples at the bottom there, SanDisk Professional. Again, that G-RAID product, the 2 drive-based system, it's the same enterprise class drives inside of that. So it's that same 24/7 workflow that you have there that will be in those. And that's what I recommend for anybody, any photographer as well. SanDisk Professional G-RAID drive there. Now, if you're looking for collaborative archival solutions, if you're working with other people in other parts of the world or country or wherever, and you need to share files with them, a good option you can do that with is our MyCloud Home Duo, which is a RAIDed drive as well. You can set that up in RAID mode so you have the automatic backup on it. But this drive connects to your Ethernet connection on your router, not to a computer directly. And so because it connects to your internet router, it's accessible to any computer anywhere in the world that there's an internet connection. But don't worry, there's security on it. It's password protected. And so, it's not that anybody can get access to it. You can control who gets access. You can control specific files or folders. You can revoke that access, et cetera. It's very customizable in that sense. And then for those of you who need larger capacities, we make a 4-bay system. That's this little box right here. As you can see, there are 4 drives inside of that. This is called a SanDisk Professional G-RAID shuttle. And they go up to 72 terabytes right now, or soon to be 80 terabytes, or already 80 terabytes if I'm just not remembering correctly. The advantage to a RAID 5 is, oh, sorry, I'm going to go back to the 2-bay system for a second, because I do want to talk about RAID 0, which is called striping mode on the 2-bay systems. That's the way they come out of the box. I don't ever recommend using that for anyone, because RAID 0 writes the data across both drives and such. It just basically writes a piece of data on one and another piece on another one, in such a way that if any one of those drives fails, there's no data recovery. There's no way to get your data. It is lost forever should something fail on that. So when you buy a G-RAID drive, make sure that you're resetting it into RAID 1 mirror mode and not just using it out of the box that way, because RAID 0 is setting yourself up for disaster, so to speak, in theory. All right, going back to the 4-bay systems, because what's beneficial about the 4-bay systems is they don't, the RAID 5 mode, which they come that way in the out of the box, so you don't have to do any configuration, which is really nice. But what that means is essentially it writes the data across the 4 drives in such a way that should any one of those drives fail, the data is still sort of safe and secure on the other 3 drives. So it basically writes it across 3 drives, and then it writes some independent data on the 4th drive that basically uses an algorithm to tell it what the data is in the corresponding locations of the other 3 drives. I can go into further detail if anybody is curious long after this session. Ask the question, stick around, we can go over that if you want. But the benefit of the RAID 5 besides that is, you know, in the 4-bay systems, this gives you, because you're using 3 drives, you get 3/4 the capacity. So in a 72 terabyte system, you'd essentially get 56 terabytes of usable data in that. And because you're reading and writing to 3 drives at the same time, it goes a lot faster. You get up to 750 megabyte read-write speeds out of this drive because you're reading and writing to 3 drives at the same time, as opposed to just writing to a singular drive, which is limited to 250 megabytes per second. So this is good for anybody doing large centralized archival systems and storage, who wants to put everything in one location, but still have that data redundancy. So if you put everything on here, one of those drives fails, again, we ship you a replacement within the 5-year warranty. You put it back into the system, it rebuilds your data, but everything is still safe there. It's like mirroring your data, but it's not exactly mirroring your data. So it's writing it in such a way that it gives you 3 out of 4 drives of capacity rather than 1-to-1 in the mirror mode. All right, and then, you know, we've got also a cloud version of that, the WD My Cloud Pro series of drives. Again, connect to your internet port or Ethernet port on your router, and customizable access to whomever you want, and you can access it anywhere in the world as well. And again, the G-Drive shuttle, the G-RAID shuttle, excuse me, enterprise class drives inside of that again, so that you're getting that professional workflow solution there. Okay, I got a couple of questions. I'm going to try to answer them. John wants to know, do you have a competitor for the Lessee Rugged Boss that allows you to store files in the field to a hard drive without a laptop? One that handles CF Express cards? Unfortunately, we do not. We short-sightedly discontinued it about a year ago, and B&H bought all of our old inventory and sold through it all very recently. So unfortunately, we don't have that solution anymore. I've been pushing them to make it. Doesn't make sense that we don't have it, but oh well. John's asking, he's got a G-Speed with 4 bays. What drive should I buy to replace my existing drives? How should I store the old drive safely? So, John, you've hit on a good point. We don't sell these boxes empty because we don't want you putting cheap consumer level drives in them, which defeats the whole point of buying a SanDisk Professional product to begin with. We want you having those enterprise class drives, those 24/7 workflow drives inside of them. So we only put them with drives inside. So when they fail, I would recommend only buying replacements of the same class, which, John, that's our WD UltraStar drive, or sometimes called WD Gold, depending on where you buy it from. Either of those are the enterprise class internal drives that we sell, and those would be good options to replace any drive that's out of warranty in an old G-Speed or G-Tech product. Somebody's asking, are you familiar with Drobo? That was trending a few years ago. I remember wanting to buy it, but read that it was linked to using their own hard drives. Is the PR4100 the same system? Can you use it with other hard drives? So Drobo was actually was a software-based RAID system. All of the solutions I've talked to you about on this slide and all of the ones that we have, they're all hardware-based RAID solutions. And that basically means that the RAID configuration and the system that determines where the data is written on the various drives, it's all based in the hardware, in the mechanical components. It's not based on software. And like I told you before, with directories, software gets corrupt in time. I tell people, run whenever you hear about a software-based RAID solution, because in time it gets junky, it gets corrupted, and it has significant problems. You should only ever look to buy hardware-based RAID hard drive storage solutions. So Drobo, while it was kind of nice that it was expandable RAID storage, you could pop any new drive in there and expand, it would collectively expand the offering. You can't do that with any hardware-based RAID. You have to either replace all 4 or 2 of the drives. You can replace a singular one, but if you replace it with a higher capacity, it only reads them at the lowest capacity of the other drives inside there. So you don't get the full capacity of that. If you buy a single and put it into a single one that is higher capacity than what you already have in there. Hopefully that makes sense. The PR4100 though is not like the Drobo. It is again hardware RAID, so it is much more reliable. And we do sell the MyCloud Pro systems empty if you did want to put your own drive in there. But again, please don't just buy the cheapest hard drive to put in there thinking you're saving some money, because in the long run, you're going to be hurting yourself. For the MyCloud Pro boxes, we make a series of drive called WD Red Pro that are really built for NAS systems like the PR4100 that you see there. So WD Red Pro would be the only drive I'd recommend putting into the EX4100 or the PR4100 or the EX4100 as well. Ed's asking, is it possible to temporarily replace one drive in a 2-bay system occasionally to make a third backup to store off-site? I want to say 99% yes. There might be something that makes it on that if you take that drive out and put it on a shelf as a third backup. I believe though it may only be accessible in a RAID 1 mirror mode system. I don't believe you can put it into an enclosure and read the data off of it, but I could be wrong about that. I'll have to look into that. Ed, I'm also going to give my email at the end of this session. Ed, if you want to email me and remind me of that question and give me your contact information, I can get back to you with the correct answer, because I may not be correct on that. David's asking, can the G-class drives be used in other RAID devices like a Qnap or others? Yep, you could totally pull these drives out and use them in something else. You have to reformat them for the new box you're putting them in, but they are a standard hard drive that will work in any system and whatnot as well. Okay. So I believe this is our last question. How many places should your data exist? I'm looking for a number here. And again, this is best practices for data. All right. Obviously, the more the better, but sometimes financially speaking, that's not feasible. So the ideal solution or the minimum solution we recommend is to have your data in at least 3 places. And this being World Backup Day, hopefully you're data is backed up. So what are those 3 places? First should be, your computer or your camera or the memory card, et cetera, wherever you're using the data. The second should be a backup hard drive that sits next to your computer system. And if you want to even get more redundant, have a second backup hard drive that sits next to your computer system, or buy a RAID hard drive system that gives you a duplicate backup on it as well. Because hard drives can fail, so it's always good to have another one. But the biggest thing, and what a lot of people don't do, is we recommend having a third offsite backup. And whether that's you buy a cloud service license and you upload your data to iCloud or Amazon Web Services or wherever, or whether that's you just buy a third physical hard drive and you ship it off to a relative in another state, or you put it in a lockbox in a bank, or you leave it in your office, across town or something. I always tell people having an offsite backup is important, because you could have a natural disaster. You can have a fire in your house. You can have a flood, an earthquake, wherever, or a robbery, and all of the, your computer and your backup hard drive are gone. So it's always a good idea to have a backup somewhere else. And cloud services are great for that if you need something that's a little bit more immediate. If you're like me and you don't have a whole lot of data that you care about losing all the time, I just leave one at my parents' house every Christmas when I go visit them. I take it home at Thanksgiving, back it up, and I leave it back with them at Christmas, and then I leave it there for a year. Thank God I've never had to do it, but I've been doing that for the last 10, 15 some years, and always having an offsite backup at my parents' house. So that is probably it, I think. Are there any other questions as we go to the end? So yep, that's the end of my presentation. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you got some good information out of here. And the big takeaway, I said, SanDisk Professional should be the only brand of hard drive that you buy if you're a photographer or any kind of content creator. And here into the chat, I'm putting that link that you see there to all the digital assets. So this is where you can download, this whole PowerPoint presentation if you want, but also all those little takeaways that you saw there as well. I am also putting my email address into the chat so that you can copy and paste that, and it's a little easier as well. And those of you on the live stream, you obviously, you'll have to screenshot this and type it manually. I apologize for the gibberish link that it is there, unfortunately. So that said, well, I'm going to answer a few last minute questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am going to download this chat window and put all your names and correct answers into Excel and choose one of you at random. So while I am doing that in the background, please, any last questions that you guys have, please put them in the Q&A. I see one just came up. What recommendations do you have for cloud service backups and large archive data? I've heard Backblaze, but is there much else? There's a ton of else ones. Dropbox is a good one. iCloud is a good one. I think Acronis has their own cloud service as well. I think those are some good options to go forth with for cloud storage solutions. It just sort of depends on what your price range is and what your ease of use and what you need is. Diana wants to know, is it okay to put a portable hard drive in a safety deposit box? Yeah, just again, don't leave it inactive for too long. You want to try to, a spinning hard drive, you want to try to keep it active at least once a year, if not a little bit more often. So if you put it in a lockbox, just make sure that you're accessing that every so often, because if you come back 3 years later, just like a Honda Civic that you leave in a garage for 3 years, you go to start it up 3 years later and it might not start up because the engine has died or has component failure in there for being inactive for too long. Okay, I have all your names here. So selected. All right, the winner for the raffle is Thomas Garnett. So congratulations, Thomas. If you want, Thomas, no, I need to get your email address from you so that I can reach out, get your shipping address. So what I need you to do, Thomas, is go into the chat, not the Q&A, but go into the chat. And then in the to field where it says everyone, select that and instead type host participant, hosts and panelists, I mean. And then that message will only come to me and to Derek. Put your email address in the chat there, that way, so that I can get it and you're not exposing your email address to everybody else. Give it a minute or two, Thomas, for you to put it in there. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to choose another winner. And I'm going to answer some questions in the meantime. So I see Jim wants to know, is there a problem with replacing different type drives in a RAID? Well, first of all, if you have a RAID system that's set up in RAID 1 or RAID 5, if you put drives in there that are higher capacity than what's already in there, they won't read the additional capacity. That drive, so for example, if all your drives in there are 4 terabyte drives, you pop one out and you put an 8 terabyte drive inside. The RAID system is going to only read that 8 terabyte drive up to 4 terabytes of its capacity. It will ignore the rest of it. But you could pop out all 4 and put 4 8 terabyte drives in there, and you get a whole bigger boost of speed out of that drive, or a boost of capacity out of that whole system in general. So you can do that if that's what you want to do. In terms of the quality of drive, I wouldn't recommend mixing and matching them. You can, but you don't need to. And I wouldn't recommend it because you have one that performs better than the other. You're increasing the likelihood of failure. You put 2 cheap drives in there and 2 expensive hard drives in there. You know, in a RAID 5 system, in a 4-bay RAID 5, if 2 drives fail, you've lost all your data. There's no data recovery. So I don't want you putting cheap drives in there. And that's, again, why I mentioned before, we don't sell those boxes empty, because we don't want people mixing and matching different quality of drives in there. Because if you do put lower quality drives in there, you're increasing the likelihood that 2 could fail. And at which point, you know, in that RAID 5 system, you've lost all your data essentially. All right, so I've got Thomas's email. Thomas, expect an email from me shortly, and we'll get your shipping address. And thank you all for attending. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any more questions, you got my email. It was in the chat. Please reach out to me. I'm always here. You can always email me, put me in your contacts, and email me 6 months from now. If you have a question later, happy to help you find whatever, answer those questions and find whatever the right hard drive is for you. So is the B&H staff. They're actually extremely knowledgeable in hard drive and what the right drive is for you, et cetera. So they are a knowledgeable source as well. They aren't like the typical retail employee that just picks up a box and reads the specs to you. Those guys actually really know what they're talking about too. So they're a good resource as well. Oh, I do see one more question. So the RAID will use the full capacity if you replace all 4 drives with bigger drives. Yep, as long as all 4 of those bigger drives are the same capacity, you can increase the full capacity of that RAID system, John. But don't use cheap drives in there. Use enterprise class drives, or use at least our WD Red Pro series of drives in those as well. All right, thank you everybody. Happy World Backup Day. Please do shop if you don't need if you do need a hard drive, if you don't have a backup hard drive, go to B&H's website at the top. They've got a little banner, click here for deals, and you can see what drives are on special. And again, SanDisk Professional, only buy SanDisk Professional. That's the one takeaway. All right, thanks everyone.